All 5 of these discoveries were made before the NAFTA went into effect. All of these discoveries relate to either economics or human behavior. The NAFTA was written by people who had college educations, so they all had access to this information. That means 4 possible things. Either the education system wasn't even good enough to teach these things to those people, or they did learn them and ignored them, or they learned about them and thought they understood them, but they didn't really, or they did learn them and did understand them, and the NAFTA is proceeding exactly as they planned. Now, the farmers are being driven off their land because the people who want their land for tractor farming have used a combination of imported food from the United States and the tax system in Mexico to rig their economy so that the only way a farmer can sell enough crops in a year to pay his taxes is by tractor farming. Then either he switches to tractor farming, or more likely, he can't afford a tractor and can't keep his farm. Well, farmers are smart enough to learn math. Farmers already know a lot about biology, so that wasn't the problem. If the goal of the NAFTA was democracy, why were the people who wrote it so afraid of what would happen if the farmers who would be affected by it got enough education to understand it? And that still didn't work, because the farmers still understood it well enough to see that they were going to lose their farms. Now, instead of men competing against each other by debating, men are competing against each other with guns. So, what are we going to do? Are we going to punish Mexican people now for caring about their own families? If that's the big plan, we've got much bigger problems we ought to be thinking about than immigration. Now a lot of people are saying that the SB1070 isn't going to lead to racial profiling because a police officer isn't allowed to ask a person their nationality unless he stops them for some other offense. But if you can already see that the laws are biased against you, and you think the laws are going to be enforced by racist people, why should you believe that giving people like that more control over your life is going to be beneficial to you? The problem isn't what the law says. The problem is that the law is going to be enforced by people you don't trust. So, by protesting the law, you're doing what you think is best and watching out for yourself and your family and your friends. Something like this happened to me last year. I have to make interest payments on a variable interest loan every month. But then my hours at my job got cut back. My income got cut back by 20%, but they didn't lower the interest rate on my loan. So now, with the income I was making, I could pay all my living expenses, except for food. I had to take money out of my savings account to buy food. So in the situation I was in, I didn't know how I was going to buy food next year. Who made the decision not to lower my interest rate? I don't know who that person was, so I don't know how he made his decision. The interest rates at the bank get changed as part of some big economic plan that's supposed to be good for America and good for me. But I don't know what the plan is or how it's made, so I don't know how to tell if the plan is working or not. Maybe the person who made that decision really did know what he was doing. Or maybe he thought he knew what he was doing, but he made a mistake. Or maybe my not being able to buy food anymore was the plan. I had no way of knowing, because I didn't even know who this person was. So I started thinking about other situations that were similar to mine. Two situations I thought of were Joseph Stalin and Chairman Mao forcing famines upon some parts of their country to kill off a lot of people who opposed them. That was a pretty extreme comparison, so I didn't jump to the conclusion that's what was really happening. But I already knew about the farmers in Mexico being driven off their farms and forced to go work in factories because they were forced into an economic situation where they couldn't afford to keep their farms. So maybe something like that was happening to me, too. So I reacted to the situation in the way I thought was best, and I didn't care what anyone else thought about that. If a plan that's supposed to be beneficial to me looks like a threat to me, of course I'm not going to cooperate with the plan. I'm going to try to think of something else. And what part of that whole story doesn't apply to every Mexican person who's trying to immigrate to the United States because they can't see how to make a life for themselves at home?